I've got a hot take for this Georgia-Mississippi State game that's going to commence in Starkville at noon Eastern on Saturday. I think Georgia is going to hit the 250-yard mark on the ground. I think Georgia is going to do exactly what it wants to do offensively, which is churn the clock out by running the football effectively, pounding it down the defense's throat with Nate Frazier, with Chauncey Bowens. Maybe we see a little bit of Dwight Phillips in there, saw a little bit of him. You're going to see Gunnar Stockton's legs be used a little bit, although I think they might limit that, and we could talk about that later on in the video. But my take on this game is Georgia's going to do what it wants to do offensively, what it's wanted to do offensively the entire season, and what they talked to us about the entire offseason. And in result, I think Georgia's going to leave Starkville with a double-digit win over the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I've got numbers that I think help prove my point and help prove my take. I'm going to bring you those numbers here in just a second. I messed my name up. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about the rushing battle in this game. Georgia, one of the better running teams in this conference. Actually, they've kind of fallen in the middle of the pack at 7 in the conference running the football. They were, or 6, excuse me. A couple of down games running the football has limited the Dogs a little bit. This past weekend, Georgia didn't hit its usual mark on the ground at Auburn, right? That's a kind of an outlier game for Georgia where it didn't hit its mark on the ground. Well, Auburn's a top run defense in this conference. Florida, kind of middle of the pack. And they struggled a little bit, right? Georgia ran really well against Tennessee. Georgia ran very well against Alabama. They ran the ball very well against Kentucky. This is a team that can run the football against SEC competition. But why do I think Georgia's going to hit the 250-yard marker or go over that number? Well, Mississippi State, that's arguably the worst aspect of this football team. It doesn't stop the run very well. I don't think this is a bad Mississippi State team by any means, right? They've got a winning record. They've got a pretty solid win over Arizona State at home. Then 4 SEC losses in a row, grabbed an SEC win up in Fayetteville last week against Arkansas. But this is a team that has allowed a lot of rushing yards in this conference, particularly against the better rushing teams. Well, Georgia is one of the better rushing teams in the SEC. So what did Mississippi State do against the two kind of top run teams it played in? Arkansas, the second best running team in the conference, and Texas A&M, the third best running team in the conference in terms of yards per game on the ground. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. Both hit over 200 yards, 299 for A&M and 3 touchdowns, 239 and 3 touchdowns for Arkansas. So they've allowed big numbers on the ground to the top run teams in this conference that they've played. Against Tennessee, which was the next best running team in the conference that it's played, at 7th. We know that Tennessee's kind of a pass-first team. They like to establish the pass with the run, but it's a team that is better through the air than it is on the ground. Tennessee got about 140 yards on the ground, so that is a respectable day, not the best, but respectable. Well, Georgia's running for over 180 yards per game. We've seen them hit the 200-yard mark a handful of times this season. We've seen them get close to that 200-yard mark, and when Georgia does that well, it has a really good chance of winning the football game. One of the only games that you see where the team wins the rushing battle and loses the game, well, that happened for Georgia against Alabama at home. So it is possible that Georgia goes into Starkville, runs the ball well, and loses. But I think if they're able to run the football really well, like I'm predicting, Gunnar Stockton's going to have a simple day. And I don't think we see 30 pass attempts out of Gunnar Stockton. I'd be surprised. He had 29 last week against Florida. He hasn't had over 30 in, I think, just 2 or 3 of the games this season. So that's not Georgia's MO. They're not going to go in there and light up the football. You're going to see them try to execute the game plan that they've been trying to execute all year. Run the football, stop the run. Well, they're playing a defense, and I know it's on the road. I know there's going to be cowbells. I know that things are difficult on the road in the SEC. We have to hear Kirby say it every week. He emphasized it again, I think 4 times during the press conference on Monday. Another game in the SEC, another difficult road game in the SEC. Yes, that is true. But Georgia should be able to handle this team running the ball. They're better in the trenches. They've got good backs. Who are going to be the backs, right? I mean, Chauncey Bowens, the lead ball carrier, 446 yards, 5 touchdowns on the season. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry. He's their most efficient running back so far this season. Nate Frazier has 394 yards and 2 touchdowns himself. You're going to see him get a good bit of carries. He has the most carries out of anyone on this football team with 89, 10 more than Chauncey Bowens. I think that would either be a little bit more even or Chauncey would have a little bit more if he wasn't dealing with an injury heading into the Auburn game that limited him to just a handful of touches at Auburn a few weeks ago. Bowens was the one that delivered the blow last week. He was the one that had the explosive run against Alabama as well. I think Bowens is the best back on this football team. I think you see him have a solid day. I think you see a solid day out of Nate Frazier. We're waiting on explosion from Nate Frazier, right? 24 yards is his long carry this year. We know that it's possible for him to hit a 30, 40, 50-yarder. Right? He did that last year a couple times. It's in his wheelhouse. He's had some issues with ball security, right? With fumbling and letting the football go. And you can see the emphasis on him trying to be more secure with the football. I question if that's slowing him down a little bit. Now, slowing him down is more important than losing the football, having a costly turnover. We saw last week, Georgia turned the ball over. Florida had a short field. They go on to score a touchdown. Another short field off of a special teams play. Florida scores another touchdown on that ensuing drive. So if Frazier's mobility is limited a little bit by enhanced ball security, I think you're going to take that every day of the week, especially when they have Chauncey Bowens. They have another explosive back in Dwight Phillips Jr. that we just don't see a lot. We saw him more at the beginning of the season, and then he didn't really play for a couple games. Saw him a couple times against Florida. I wonder if they're trying to weave Dwight Phillips back into this running game plan. This ticks with Gunnar Stockton, though, right? Ticks with the option. We've seen more of it in the past, right? You saw the danger he could bring with his legs against Auburn. You saw it against Tennessee. Saw it against Ole Miss. You definitely saw it against Marshall and Austin Peay. But you haven't seen it as much this past week against Florida. Fast defense. And we know that heading into the bye, Gunnar was a little bit banged up, right? He was a little bit banged up heading into that Ole Miss game, dealing with some, I think, injuries in his torso area. I think it was his oblique area that was giving him problems. They've got to manage Gunnar a little bit, right? He didn't practice in full that week. So I don't think you're going to see this be a huge Gunnar running game. Could be wrong, but I don't think that's going to be in the cards. I think you're going to see the emphasis with the running backs, particularly with Bowens and Frazier, and maybe you see a little bit of Dylan Bell running the football, maybe a little bit of Cash Jones. This is a team that runs the football really well, and I think that this is a real opportunity for Georgia to have a dominant game from start to finish. We've only really seen that one time in the conference so far for the Dogs, and that was against Kentucky at home. I think this is its next best opportunity to do that. Mississippi State's not been good in conference play. They've played some close games. Heartbreaker kind of loss against Texas at home a couple weeks ago. That goes to overtime. They had a big lead in that game. Close loss to Florida. Close loss to Tennessee. Close win to Arkansas. So this is a team that's familiar with close games. But I just think that this is Georgia's best opportunity since that Kentucky game to separate. And it can do that by running the football, controlling the pace of the game, burning the clock, and just being in control. We haven't seen Georgia be in control. We've seen other teams have a little bit more control in the game and Georgia have to come back. I don't think that's going to happen this week, and I think part of that is going to be because of the success I believe Georgia is going to find on the ground this week. My hot take, over 250 yards for Georgia on the ground, a number that is difficult to do, but a number that is shown to be doable on this Mississippi State run defense. That is 15th out of 16th in the conference stopping the run. Georgia runs the ball the second most times per game. That's a number I meant to bring up earlier. The only team that runs the ball more each game is Missouri. Georgia runs it almost 42 times per game. I didn't have the exact number, but Missouri runs it more. Georgia's going to run it a lot. I think they're going to run it for a lot of yards. You're going to see them dominate the game with the ground game. Newsletter, or actually just the links that you need down below to sign up for Dawg Post on the website. That's what you need to check out down below in the description. We'll see you in Starkville riding home.